dust having well and truly settled on season 1 and build up for this year's Christmas special about to begin, we thought now would be a good time to discuss how Doctor Who can improve going forward. And don't get me wrong, the 15th Doctor's debut year had some fantastic episodes like Rogue and Boom and 73 Yards, and it had a delightful, charismatic duo leading the charge. But it wasn't perfect, and it did make several mistakes both on screen and off. So if Russell T Davies phoned up Who Culture Towers and asked what we would do to make Doctor Who even bigger and better going forward, here's what we would suggest. Number 10, make the season opener a proper event. Between 2005 and 2008, Russell T Davies' series openers were fun, frothy romps that allowed the Doctor and their new companion to get to know each other. Since then, we've had sweeping blockbuster premieres like The Impossible Astronaut and Spyfall, episodes that boldly and loudly announce Doctor Who is back. Now, compared to those, Space Babies just felt like a mid-season filler, awkwardly elevated to primetime status. Maybe it was the fact that it dropped at midnight, or maybe it was because Space Babies, a silly bit of fun though it was a tad underwhelming. And dare we say, maybe a little bit embarrassing? Either way, it just didn't feel like a big launch of a brand new era. Something that would get potential new fans raving on social media. I mean, there was definitely talk on social media, but I don't think it had the desired response. Maybe a little bit more of a, what did I just watch? You know, there was no gripping drama or a mind-blowing plot twist. Basically, there were just awkward CGI baby mouths and a farting spaceship. And then by immediate contrast, the second story of that night, The Devil's Chord, was a much better opening episode. It had a huge guest star in Jinx Monsoon, it featured the Beatles, and the musical elements led neatly into that night's Eurovision Song Contest, and it all fit together. So if they'd led with this episode on its own, it would have been interesting to see how audience retention for the season was affected. And the third episode then, Boom, would have also been a great opener. A stone-cold thriller with a brilliant concept and a riveting central performance from our new Doctor. Now that would have definitely got casual viewers buzzing about the latest Doctor Who relaunch. And given that we're likely to meet Varada Sethu's new companion Belinda in the season 2 premiere, that might be enough to eventize the episode. But we also need something a lot more dramatic and thrilling than Space Babies was. Now, you and me may love a bit of silly Doctor Who, but it's much harder to get broader audiences to take those episodes seriously. And to be fair to Russell T Davies and co, it did seem that they realised this. I mean, not only was the decision to add The Devil's Chord to the opening day lineup a clear admission of Space Babies' shortcomings, but they were once hoping to launch season 1 in January 2024, which would then essentially make The Church on Ruby Road, which is one of the stronger episodes of this new era so far, the season opener. Number 9. Blah, blah, blah. Number 9, more new writers. Ncuti Gatwa is the show's first lead actor who was born after Doctor Who went off the air in 1989. So his completely fresh perspective on Doctor Who and the character of the Doctor could have been fundamental in revitalising the show for the 2020s. However, that's not quite how things have worked out, and that's partly because the majority of Gatwa's scripts were written by 2 dyed-in-the-wool Doctor Who fans who have already written a substantial amount of Doctor Who. And while we did have Kate Herron and Bryony Redman write the fantastic Rogue, one of the biggest disappointments of season 1 was the lack of new talent. If Doctor Who is going to survive past this second era of Russell T Davies's, then Russell needs to start shaping the next generation of showrunners and bringing in younger writers who have fresh, new ideas for what Doctor Who can be is the best way to do that. We're not saying that old writers or returning writers can't get the job done. I mean, Stephen Moffat has written more Doctor Who than just about anyone, and yet Boom was the best episode of season 1 by a fair margin. And similarly, Russell T Davies delivered the goods with 73 Yards, and there are fans already hailing Wild Blue Yonder as a classic. It's just that the balance between new voices and seasoned voices needs to just be a bit better. You have to look at what's next for Doctor Who. Russell T Davies and Moffat can't keep doing this forever as much as we'd like them to. And there's also the fact that then having Russell write less of the scripts would then allow him to focus on the bigger picture season arcs and general show running, which should lead to a more cohesive and satisfying overall package. Now, it's already looking likely that season 2 will feature more new writers, and hopefully this continues going forward. By all means, invite Stephen Moffat back to write a new episode every year, but at the same time, have one eye on finding the next Stephen Moffat. Number 8, more imaginative spin-offs. When the Whoniverse was first announced, our fan brains were fizzing with all the incredible possibilities for potential spin-off shows. An older Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor on Trenzalore, the Time War, the Nyssa Adventures, the Diary of River Song. So it was pretty disappointing then to hear that the first new Whoniverse show will be the war between the land and the sea. With an entire universe of possibilities, the fact that Russell T Davies settled on doing a Children of Earth-style drama miniseries about humanity's conflict with the Sea Devils seems to be sorely lacking in imagination. We've seen that story play out so many times already, from 1970's The Silurians to 2022's Legend of the Sea Devils. Now, to be fair, we don't know much about the war between the land and the sea at this stage. We don't even know when it's going to air, although I did hear a rumour that it could fill the Christmas 2025 slot in place of the main show, which could be interesting and could maybe elevate it to an event, maybe be a bit more interesting, but that is entirely hearsay, so don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. Take it with a pinch of salt. Now, it's entirely possible that there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. You know, there could be a doctor or two in there, or some exciting twist that will elevate it to true event status. And regardless, the show itself is likely to be pretty good. I mean, the cast is stacked with talent, and it's being written by two veteran Doctor Who writers in Russell T Davies and Pete McTighe. But if they want the Whoniverse to become a huge global franchise, then the ideas need to be much bigger and better than what we've got so far. Not just ideas that will excite hardcore fans, but ideas that will get everybody talking. You know, David Tennant returning as the 14th Doctor was a bold swing that broke the internet for a solid year and resulted in monumental excitement around the 60th anniversary. That's the kind of big-scale thinking that we hoped to see when that snazzy Whoniverse logo was first unveiled in 2023. Number 7, no more Dr. Light episodes. One of the biggest problems with Season 1 was the absence of Ncuti Gatwa. It was an unavoidable consequence of him needing to film Sex Education Season 4, but it did undoubtedly harm Doctor Who. With only 8 episodes and Gatwa largely being absent for 2 of them, it was harder to build a strong connection with his Doctor. It's particularly frustrating because he was really getting into his stride with Boom, only to then disappear for 2 weeks. And then when he returned, the end of the season was right around the corner. Now, on the plus side, we shouldn't have this issue again in Season 2, as Ncuti Gatwa had no other major filming obligations and could fully focus on Doctor Who. And really, with only 8 episodes in a season, we shouldn't be seeing Dr. Light episodes at all. Back in the old days of 13 episodes per series, it was fine if the Doctor was absent for 1, maybe 2 of the episodes, but today, those 1 or 2 episodes represent a much bigger fraction of the 15th Doctor's screen time. For a quarter of Doctor Who Season 1, the Doctor wasn't in it. So if Gatwa follows his predecessors and sticks to the 3 series rule, then he'll already have a tragically low episode count in comparison. So let's see him as much as we can, shall we? Number 6, launch in the autumn or winter. Now, there was some disappointment when Season 1 failed to replicate the viewing numbers of the 60th anniversary specials and the Church on Ruby Road. Now, the average 7-day viewing figure of the 2023 specials was over 7 million people, while the average for Season 1 was just under 4 million. That is a big drop. But there are a number of factors behind that. Firstly, David Tennant and Catherine Tate were always going to draw in the big crowds, and regeneration episodes, plus the first episode of A New Doctor, are always huge events. Also, people seem to forget that Doctor Who has broadly had a core audience of around 4 million people for the past 9 years, and last we checked, the sky was yet to fall, so don't panic. Crucially, however, the time of year also plays a very big part in the ratings game. You know, when it's colder, wetter, and generally just more miserable, people are more inclined to stay at home on a Saturday night and tune in to Doctor Who. And this was reflected in the fact that 73 Yards was the highest rated episode of the season during a period of heavy rainfall and travel disruptions in the UK. Now, there are already whispers that Season 2 will start to air in March, which would be a wise move. And future seasons should follow suit and also air during a colder, darker month, whether that's at the start of the year or towards the end of the year. And this wouldn't automatically guarantee monstrous ratings, but it would definitely get more casual eyeballs on the show. Number 5, ditch the midnight release. Now, on a similar note, the decision to release new episodes at midnight in the UK clearly did season 1 no favours. Now look, I'll be the first person to admit that from a selfish work perspective, it worked massively in our favour, but I still don't think it was the wisest move for the show as a whole. Doctor Who's most passionate and loyal audience has always been in the UK, so to drop the show at a time that was deeply inconvenient for that audience was a very strange move indeed. Post-episode chatter and hype took a hit because your biggest fans were half asleep or fully asleep. Now it's that initial groundswell from the hardcore fans that then gets positive word of mouth flowing, which then casual viewers can hear about, and it prompts them to check out the latest episode. But when those hardcore fans are talking into the Twitter void at 2 AM on a Saturday morning, that's more difficult then for the show to catch on. And while season 1 did still air in that typical Doctor Who Saturday tea time slot, there's something to be said for launching it there too. Make it an appointment, an event not to be missed. Saturday evening is the optimal time for the vital UK audience. And then for the US viewers, it would be Saturday afternoon, so it's still a more convenient time for them as well. This way, you get everybody buzzing about the show at once. We don't need staggered release times again. That just staggers the hype and therefore diminishes potential interest in the show. Ultimately, dropping new episodes on iPlayer and Disney Plus at the exact same time that they aired on BBC One, that worked very well for the 60th anniversary and for the church on Ruby Road. You know what they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Number 4, cut down on the crying. Here we go, let's get into the nitty-gritty. This is a controversial topic, isn't it? Now, the 15th Doctor is more in touch with his emotions than any of his predecessors. But is there such a thing as being too emotional? A crying Doctor definitely has impact. Look at the scene in Boom where Ruby gets shot. It's made all the more gut-wrenching by the fact that we can see and hear the Doctor's heart shatter into tiny pieces. However, when it doesn't work, and when it happens constantly, it undermines the character of the Doctor. Imagine if, during the big cliffhanger of the Time of Angels, the 11th Doctor froze up, like the 15th Doctor does at the end of The Legend of Ruby Sunday. The 11th Doctor has a big hero moment. He delivers a speech to the angels, while the 15th Doctor kind of stands aghast and does nothing as Sutekh brings his gift of death to all of humanity. That's not the Doctor. The Doctor would snap out of his shock, his fear, and defiantly warn Sutekh not to cross him, and declare that he's going to save everyone in the universe. I'm not saying that the Doctor shouldn't ever cry or be more emotional. This trait of the 15th Doctor has lots of storytelling potential, and when it works, like in Boom, it enhances the scene. But when it happens at the wrong time and in basically every episode, it loses its impact. This is something that needs to be balanced a little better in season 2 and beyond, I think. Number 3, more Doctor companion friction. Yes, the 15th Doctor and Ruby Sunday are the very best of pals, and that's lovely. But it's not very interesting, is it? Ruby just stands and watches the Doctor bring death to death in the finale. She asks no questions, she doesn't interrogate the Doctor's plan, she just stands in the background as he tells off a very bad dog. Where's the tension? Where's the butting of heads? Just because they're best friends? That doesn't mean that they have to be nicey-nicey 24/7, especially because that's not how real-life friendship works. Look at some of Doctor Who's other best friend pairings. The 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane adored each other, but she still took the mickey out of him or chided him for his cold response to the death of Lawrence Scarman. And the 11th Doctor and Amy, they were at each other's throats from the very first episode. They were great Doctor Who companions, and that's because they had agency, and they weren't afraid to stand up for themselves or offer a different perspective. Now, we saw flashes of this in Boom, which was fantastic, but that was pretty much it. The result was a fun yet two-dimensional Doctor-companion relationship, so hopefully we can see a lot more friction between them going forward, whether that's Ruby or season 2's new companion Belinda Chandra. Number 2, 10-episode seasons. Now, something that affected the development of the Doctor and Ruby's relationship was season 1's short runtime. Doctor Who used to have 12 or 13 episodes per series, which is unrealistic in this day and age, granted, but Chris Chibnall then cut down from 12 episodes to 10. But then those episodes were at least 50 minutes long, and in some cases they were closer to 60 minutes. Season 1, on the other hand, that was cut down to just 8 episodes, with runtimes hovering around the 45-minute mark. But with other major shows like The Boys and The Rings of Power delivering chunky 60 or 70-minute episodes, is it really too much to ask for Doctor Who to have hour-long episodes? Or stick to the 45-minute length, but then give us 10 of them instead. You have to make the additional runtime count, of course, but we saw repeated examples of season 1 needing an extra scene or two, or more room for certain storylines to breathe. Dot and Bubble, for example, that really needed a final scene in the TARDIS where the Doctor and Ruby discuss the devastating events that they just witnessed. Are we to just believe that they just flew off and never spoke about Fine Time again? Rogue did this brilliantly, with the pair discussing Rogue's sacrifice and how it affects the Doctor. Similarly, The Legend of Ruby Sunday, that starts with the Doctor heading to Unit HQ for apparently no reason whatsoever. Where was the scene in the TARDIS where they both discuss this mysterious figure that they keep spotting across time and space, before they then come to the conclusion that Unit could probably help them with this? Then they arrive at Unit. The whole season was full of little disconnects like this, leading to a slightly rushed overall feel. And a longer runtime would then also allow for more wind down time between the Doctor and companion, allowing us to actually see them being the best friends that they claim to be. Now, obviously, there are budget and workload considerations to take into account here, but if those 2 extra episodes were 2-parters, then you only really need 1 new set and 1 cast for 2 episodes. And with the show filming so far in advance these days, there's definitely enough time to get more minutes filmed. Now, what is interesting is Russell T Davies did say that he has plans in relation to these 8-episode seasons. So maybe that's a possible hint that future seasons could go up to 9 or maybe 10 episodes. Now, season 2 is sticking with the 8, but hopefully season 3 is where we'll start to see some of these changes implemented. Number 1, all of Modern Who on Disney+. One of the best things that Russell T Davies did when he returned as showrunner was he made every existing episode of Doctor Who available to stream on BBC iPlayer. Now that's great for those of us in the UK, but for everyone else, Doctor Who's various eras are spread across numerous different streamers and VOD services. And that's if they're available to watch at all. For example, in the US, BritBox contains the classic era. Max hosts the modern era, and everything from 2023 onwards is on Disney+. It's deeply confusing and very, very, very messy to have the show divided and strewn about all over the place like this. It also means that if the 14th and 15th Doctors have got new viewers curious about previous eras, then they're going to have to go and sign up to a completely different streamer to check out those stories, which really is not ideal. So while there may be pre-existing deals, rights issues, and other kinds of barriers to overcome, having at least the entirety of the modern era all in one place, whether that's Disney Plus or whatever streamer the BBC partners with in the future, wouldn't just be convenient for viewers, but it would also be a great benefit to Doctor Who itself. Over the years, we've seen countless examples of bingeable older shows exploding on streaming as waves and waves of people discover something they initially missed, largely thanks to it just being there, easily accessible on the streaming service that they flick through every single day. Putting Doctor Who in a similar position can only be beneficial. Let new viewers finish Ncuti Gatwa's first season and then immediately dive into the 9th Doctor, all within the same app. Currently, those new viewers are going to watch Agatha All Along, or The Simpsons instead, because they're there. But a centralized international Whoniverse would improve that retention, giving people more Doctor Who to discover, to watch, to talk about, and driving interest and engagement in the show even during those off seasons. Look, if one Matt Smith fan on Twitter is making waves just by watching modern Doctor Who for the first time, then just imagine what could happen if Disney Plus's 150 million subscribers got access to the back catalogue as well. Just saying. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for Who Culture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.